In this video, we're going to be talking you through the Drukhari Army. The new Codex preview. This is Joe's army that he's used against me in the battle report.
Yep.
The Drukhari versus the Ultramarines. And we thought what we would do in our Vanguard Tactics TV style is bring you guys a freeview version of what we do when we go into an army list. So what you can expect from this video is the justification behind every single unit choice.
Yeah.
So how they operate on the table, from looking at killing, holding, scoring secondary points, and then also we're going to look at some of the key combinations, stratagems, warlord traits, and relics that work really well for this army build. And it's all about finding that utility within the army so that you can really get the most out of it.
Yeah.
So Joe, how excited for you to play this army? Finally!
I'm buzzing like an old fridge. It was a dream come true being able to play with this, like getting it early, like thanks to Games Workshop, like getting us the rules, being the play testing, like being able to learn and really get into the in-depth nitty-gritty on how this army now functions is great.
This book is incredible.
Yeah.
And we've got a full podcast.
Yep.
And that is going to be out. We go into a lot more detail about the general concept of this obviously incredible codex. And then next, or on Sunday, should I say, we have a masterclass which is completely free for you to join, and we're going to be covering the 4 ways to play Drukhari. So this army list is obviously one of those 4, but we're not on that masterclass. We're going to break down the strengths, the weaknesses, the threats, the opportunities, and also go through absolutely every single element that you need to consider when you think about building a Drukhari army. So whether you're a current Drukhari player and you really want to understand what you can do with your models, or maybe you're thinking about starting a Drukhari army now because of the preview codex, or potentially you play against Drukhari a lot, or you might be playing against Drukhari and you're going to want to find out exactly what they can do against you at the table. So we're going to cover all of that on the masterclass, and to sign up for that, all you need to do is check out the link below.
Okay.
So anyway, Joe, talk us through the list.
So it's a battalion and a patrol. The battalion is a real Space Raiders detachment.
It's not a fake one.
It's not a fake one. It's not a fake one. It's all
real.
Real.
Okay.
I tell you, it gets real.
It does.
It does get real quickly. So a real Space Raiders detachment means that the core of it is you have to have 1 Archon, 1 Succubus, 1 Homunculus, a unit of Cavalry Warriors, a unit of Racks, and a unit of Witches. You have to have all of those in this detachment to fill the minimum requirements.
Yeah.
And then by being in this, the Archon has to be a Warlord, but what he does is his reroll 1's ability that he'd give to his own Cabal now goes to all core units within that detachment, and that includes the Homunculus Covens and the Witches.
Absolutely awesome. Yeah.
And because of that, he also gives it to your Incubi, your Mandrakes, your Scourges, all the blades for hire.
Okay.
Yeah. So by being like that, because you've got all 3, it means you can have all 3 types of obsession. So your Cabal still has its traits, the Witch Cult still has its own traits, and the Homunculus Covens still benefits from its own traits, and you can still use their own specific stratagems as well.
Which is awesome. So which have you gone for your Cabal?
So I have gone with the Cabal of the Black Heart.
Okay.
Yeah. My Archon, it has the Writ of the Living Muse relic, which means that he gives reroll 1s to wound to friendly Cabal core units. But because he's in part of a Real Space Raiders attachment, this is transferred over to all blades for hire as well. So all of the Incubi, all of the Mandrakes are getting reroll hits of 1 and reroll wounds of 1.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really good. My Succubus, I've bought in Lilith because I've done Cultist Strife.
Yeah.
And she is a close combat monster.
Yeah. And she's a master of Succubus, isn't she?
Yeah, so...
And on the podcast, we talk in more detail about how you can actually upgrade your characters, yeah.
And then for my Covens, I've gone Prophets of Flesh.
Yeah.
And that basically means that all of my Racks have got I've got Transhumans. You can't be wounded on anything better than a 4+, if you're being shot by a weapon that's over Strength 8.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really. So that's your HQ choices.
Yep. The Homunculus has the Vexator Mask relic, so it means that he cannot be overwatched, and when he's within 3 inches of a unit in the close combat phase, he picks them to fight last.
Beautiful.
One thing I did mention is that my Warlord trait on my Archon, it's a new Warlord trait, it's called Ancient Evil. When he's in engagement range, you pick a unit and they fight last.
So you've got Vexator Mask fight last and turns off Overwatch, and also you've got obviously his ability that turns off or makes people fight last as well.
And Cultist Drive's special ability, when they're in combat, they fight first.
Very nice.
There's a theme coming out here.
Yeah. And this was something that we really figured out when we were, we had lots of opportunity to playtest this army, and we've got so many repetitions in with it. It's finding out those core combinations that work really, really well together.
But this codex is just layered. There's so many combinations that you can kind of put together from the different cabals and obsessions, and it's you're gonna find stuff in here for probably for the next year. People will be coming up with new stuff.
Yeah, and also what Joe likes is different to what I like. We had a really good discussion on the podcast about different covens that you like compared to me, and I think that's really good that there is that sort of flavour. Obviously, when we work so closely to each other, we do also have the same sort of themes in the build, and this is definitely a list I would consider taking to a tournament. Yeah. I think it's not only thematic, but also it packs a mighty punch as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so in the battalion then, what are your troop choices?
So my troop choices, I've got 1 unit of Racks, just a 5-man unit, just very basic, a unit of 5 Cavalite Warriors to kind of fill that minimum requirements. But those Cavalite Warriors and those Racks aren't just like, they're not attacks, because they're really good cheap units that I can put into the webway or outflank to get me things like scramblers, or I can use those to put banners up.
Just do actions in general.
Yeah, they're great units for just secondaries.
Yeah, and they're super cheap at minimum requirement of 5. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
really good.
And then I've got 3 units of 10 witches. Okay. All with Shardnet and Impalers.
Yeah, and what combat drug do you typically go for?
It depends on my opponent. So if you're going against like a Marine heavy army, for instance, I might go +1 strength, because I want to wound on 4s, and then I can use a stratagem to increase that up to 5s. So you're wounding in 4s and 3s. If you're against an army that's depending on your deployment zone, if you're very far away, you might go for +2 movement. So when you disembark, you get even further on your advance.
So maybe if you're up against Tau, or you're up against Eldar, we need to close the gap really quickly, and mobility is key. Mm-hmm. I really like that. Yeah.
So those are kind of, or if you're up against an army that's got a lot of strength 3, you might go +1 toughness. So then you're a bit more resilient versus them.
Yeah, like if they've got a huge amount of, let's say, las gunfire.
Yeah.
Cool. Like
really, really strong. And the Shardnets are in that unit because of the ability to hold units in combat. You roll off with your opponent, and if you roll higher than your opponent, they can't leave combat. The only exclusion to this is Titanic units. So they can go into combat, hold them. The Shardnet and Impaler reduces your dice roll by 1. So if it's a draw, the witches still win.
Really good. Yeah.
So that's really good. So you go in there with your characters that make your opponent fight last. Then you go in with the witches who fight first. And then if anything's left alive, you keep them trapped in combat with the witches. So you can't be shot at.
Yeah. So that basically means on the table, and in terms of combat drugs, you can now take the same combat drug across all your units. You don't have to change or select. You can pick whatever you want for whatever you want. The other great thing about those Shardnets is if you are a witch player and you've got a Shardnet, you basically, if you roll a 5, it doesn't matter what your opponent rolls. Yeah. Because obviously if they roll a 6, it'll become a 5, you equal it, so it just speeds up the dice rolls a little bit. Do I roll a 5 or a 6? Yes I do, you can't fall back. Yeah. If then the opponent, if you let's say roll a 4, then it's on your opponent then to roll a 6 to get higher than you, which makes it incredibly difficult to obviously beat or get yourselves out of that. And because obviously things like Desperate Breakout, which means you can only use that if you were normally eligible to, but because this would stop that, then you wouldn't be able to use things like Desperate Breakout either. So the witches are a really core unit there, keep you in combat, and because they fight first, which is incredible, so even if they have a charge against them and You've obviously got other ways to make things fight last. You could just say you're fighting last, so the witches get to fight again. So they've not only kept you in combat, but they're going to hit you one more time, which is basically like they get a double action phase.
Yeah, and now
so it's really good.
And they put out 4 attacks each at strength 3 or strength 4 or strength 5, depending on what drugs you've given them. And their dagger is now -1, and on the roll of 6 to wound, it's an additional minus AP. So these guys can really easily take on Marines and win.
Well, because they've just got the volume of attacks.
Yeah.
You know, weight of attacks is absolute king in 40k.
Yeah.
So anytime you can put out 40 attacks from a unit or more is, you know, superb. So yeah, love that. Okay, so Joe, what's in your elite detachment?
So I've got 3 heavy hitters.
Okay.
3 units of 5 incubi.
Very nice.
These guys are absolute beasts. They've received a massive boost now, so they're weapon skill 2+. So with the Archon nearby, it means they're re-rolling 1s, so they're hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. They're now strength 5 with their glaives, so they're wounding things like aggressors on 4s or Space Marines on 3s, and obviously re-rolling 1s because of the Archon. And every roll of a 6 to wound makes them -4 AP instead of -3, and they become 3 damage instead of 2. These guys churn through elite units.
Yeah,
so nice.
They are absolutely savage, and they really pack a punch. One of the best combat units I think in the game now for their points. They are extremely points efficient, so quick. With that powers from pain, advancing and charging from turn 1 sometimes.
So that's one thing that we didn't say is because they're part of a black heart detachment. They count as being 1 turn ahead. So turn 1, these guys are advancing and charging straight out of their transports.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Beautiful.
And their Tormentors rule, which they've got, you roll 2 dice. If you roll over your opponent's leadership, they fight last.
Again, another fights last. So you need to roll over the leadership on 2 dice. But is there a way that you're manipulating leadership in this list?
Yeah, so in here, I'll go through the transports now. I've got 3 Venoms and 3 Raiders. And
Okay.
they've all got Grizzly trophies. Grizzly trophies is an aura of 3 inches where you reduce your opponent's leadership by 2.
Incredible. So you can see here how we're combining all these different elements. Fight last, fight first, modifying leadership.
Yeah.
This army really works in some really fantastic synergies.
Yeah.
And it's about having that utility. And again, with these units of incubi, they're in units of 5.
Yeah.
They can go in a venom. Venoms now go up to transport of 6, so you can take your 5 incubi and a character. And the great thing about a unit of 5 rather than a unit of 10 is that they can go in, kill something, and then if you lose your unit of incubi, because they are a glass cannon, then it doesn't matter if you lose them.
No.
And often a unit of 5 will kill, or they'll do so much damage that actually anything more than a 5-man unit is probably overkill.
Yeah.
But then what you're not suffering from is losing another, 100% of your unit in terms of points. So again, units of 5 incubi, probably the way to go. Venoms absolutely are a must, and the reason for those transports are really to help you there, so that if your opponent has any indirect fire, it's just giving you a little bit of extra safety, and also you're going to get that extra 3-inch movement when you come out of your transport as well.
And having so many transports that all do the same kind of thing, you can and Venoms are so cheap that you can use Venoms to soak up the Overwatch, and you've still got this big Raider model which can kind of just fit in behind that still gives away the aura bonus, but you've got these tree transports that are just eating up Overwatch for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which is awesome, and then once they've delivered the payload, the Venom can go move, it can shoot, it can just go and sit on an objective, it can screen out an area of the table, it can go be used to get engaged in all fronts. So you can see here how there's so many little different uses for each of these different units, and every single one has a purpose in this list.
Yeah.
It's not just thrown in, it's really considering exactly why is this unit making the list. Yeah. Okay, cool. What else have you got in the elite detachment?
And we've got 2 units of 5 Mandrakes.
Okay.
These are a big winner in the new book because they have the ability to infiltrate during the deployment phase. So you can deploy 9 inches away from your enemy's deployment zone.
And also enemy models.
And enemy models. So if you go first and your opponent has infiltrators, you can screen out parts of the table that you don't want their infiltrators to go in, or if your opponent's got banners, you can just put these mandrakes on objectives, so then your opponent can't get banners turn 1.
Yeah. Again, really strong. And then they can redeploy as well mid-game.
They've got a once per game ability where you remove them from the table and then they can redeploy in the next turn, in the next movement phase. But like going through the webway, they can go 9 inches anywhere away from enemy units.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So fast attack then, Joe?
Is a unit of 10 Hellions. These guys also another big winner. They've gone up to 2 wounds. They've gone up to toughness 4 now. They're jump infantry, so they get to ignore a lot of the terrain interactions. They move 12 inches. They can advance and charge turn 2. They're cult of strife, so they fight first. They get the bonus of the invulnerable save from power from pain, and they also get the blade artist like everyone else. So they're -1 to begin with. So roll over 6 to wound, they become -2, and they're flat 2 damage.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, these guys.
What's their strength?
Strength 4 because they get +1 from the blade.
Right. Okay. And again, you can go to strength 5.
Yeah.
You could go strength 5 -1 flat 2 damage. That is a really good profile. You know, with how many attacks a model?
3 attacks each.
3 attacks. So it's essentially like, to put this into perspective, it's like each Hellion is rolling around in combat with a heavy bolter.
Yeah.
And when you put it like that, a unit of 10. 10 heavy bolters going into unit normally does work, especially when from turn 3 onwards you're hitting on 2s, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're rerolling 1s from the Archon.
Yeah.
The Succubus, does she give you reroll 1s to wound?
Yeah, so Lilith and the Succubuses now give reroll 1s to wound to all witch units. So if your Archon's not about, she can give them reroll 1s. And also there's a new stratagem where if a unit is below starting strength, it's 1 CP, you get to reroll 1s to hit them. If they're under half strength, you reroll all hits versus them.
So that basically means the Venom shoots 1 model away.
Yeah.
Unit goes in, or a Dark Lance shot kills 1 away. Unit goes in, +1 to hit. Brilliant. Because you only have to take off 1 model.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's super efficient, really good.
And they do have such a big threat.
Yeah.
You know, with that 12-inch move plus the advance. Really good, yeah.
And they're kind of like a really good kind of get out of jail free unit. You kind of put them in a central building and you just leave them there until say your opponent does a breakthrough that you weren't expecting, or you've bounced where you weren't expecting. They can jump in there, fill that gap, pick up what you need to do, and then you can kind of regain control of the board, which is the most important thing about this army.
And exactly, when we've got video going over how to deploy this army in a lot more detail, and again that's completely for free for you guys. And again, we've got so many more things to talk about on the masterclass, where we can go into so much more detail in how the entire army works, rather than just these. We're giving obviously you a showcase of some of the units, and in the battle report you'll see these things come off to effect. But great move blocking unit as well, some really great utility. Okay, very nice. So you spoke about your transports. You've got your 3 Venoms, your 3 Raiders. They've all got Dark Lances, haven't they, the Raiders?
Yeah. They're all Blackheart Detachment. Blackheart's one of those new abilities is you get to re-roll 1 hit roll.
Okay.
So that means that those Dark Lances on those Raiders, self-sufficient, don't need characters nearby, and it's 1 shot. You're probably gonna hit, and then if you need to, you can spend a CP to re-roll to wound.
Yeah.
But these are kind of like your surgical units. If you need to pick up an elite model out of a unit so you can get your re-roll bonuses, or if there's a dreadnought that's kind of getting in your way on the back lines, you know?
Yeah, think of it like a light vehicle that, the combined effect of the 3 Raiders plus the next unit we're going to talk about, if they have something like a dreadnought, which your witches would struggle to kill, this is where the Dark Lances really prevail, because the Disintegrator is good at killing infantry, but your army does that so well anyway. But the best thing about these Dark Lances, they've had a slight improvement in terms of their stat profile. They're minimum 3 damage with
additional D3 on top.
Additional D3, so you're always going to be minimum 4. And it's where an enemy has units of transports. That is where you've got to pop those transports, get the goods out, and send the witches in. Or, for example, in the meta at the moment, we've got things like Death Shroud Terminators, 3 wounds, and they -1 damage off, right? So therefore, or Dark Angels, this is where you're flat damage 4. Anything else is a bonus. Brilliant. If you can just take 1 shot, kill 1 model, then happy days. So I really like that kind of minimum 4 damage, I think, in today's game. So those three, and then what else have you got in the heavy support detachment?
So the last unit in this battalion is a Ravager with 3 Dark Lances.
Yeah.
So the Ravagers aren't getting the reroll bonuses of Archons anymore, so you're probably not going to see 3 of them on the table, but 1 on its own does a lot of heavy lifting, does the exact same work of obviously the Raiders, but you get 3 shots, you get to reroll 1, so you're probably going to hit twice, miss once, use that reroll, and then you're going to be wounding really efficiently because it's strength 8.
Yeah, so when we look at the math on this, you get 3 shots and you've got a 66% chance of hitting, so therefore that reroll just helps get that 3rd hit through, and then you should be wounding most things on 3s,
easily,
if not 2s, so therefore you can always spend a CP to get that 3rd wound through. And then what you can do is spend 2 CPs now to fire and fade that 1 Ravager back behind obscuring cover, so then all game long he can just shoot, pick his target, surgically strike, and again pop those transport, get the goods out, or maybe try and kill something that's giving you a little bit of a harder time. Maybe there's a vehicle in the backfield that has been really well screened out, just having that little bit of range is awesome. Or maybe that unit of 5 plasma inceptors that are going to potentially pick up your army because of blast. Then obviously, this is the guy that will hopefully get rid of most of those models and then give the rest of your army a bit of an easier time.
Yeah, because we took him out. I was like, oh, they're not that good anymore. Like, they don't get the rerolls. Took him out of the list. I was really struggling versus like you were playing with Tau, and I was like, I've got nothing to deal with all these transports.
Yeah.
Like nothing. Dropped a unit, put him in. Complete game changer.
And it was really the Dark Lances that we had changed. It was having that mindset of you need to really delve deep and go, okay, there's a benefit here. What's going to get the most out of it? Okay, cool. So that's the
battalion.
You got 1 patrol. What's in that?
It is a Prophets of Flesh patrol.
Okay.
It has Drukhari and a unit of Racks. So the unit of Racks do exactly what the Racks from the battalion does, but we basically paid 2 CP so we can get Drukhari in this list. He is still giving +1 to wound to those incubi, which is massive, because now they're strength 5. It means they're wounding basic Space Marines on 2s.
Wow.
And they're wounding aggressors on 3s. Yeah.
Really good.
So he's a force multiplier for an already hard-hitting unit.
And when you think about that, you think, well, why are you taking it? You're basically paying 2 CPs for Drukhari.
Yeah.
But what Drukhari's also bringing to the table is not only a character that can go in and pick up a unit himself for his points, but also you've got 3 units that are going to benefit from his ability. And if you were to ask yourself, would you spend 2 CPs to get +1 to wound on it? If it was a stratagem, would you spend it? Absolutely. So you're kind of spending that stratagem pre-game.
Yeah.
And I think it works so well in this list. And he really is a great linchpin. You can send him in. Again, he's got that same ability to make things fight last. So you've got an Archon, him, and also the Vexator Mask on the homunculus. 3 units of incubi, so there's basically 6 ways to make people fight last in this army.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it's all about control. This list, but the thing is, it's not an auto win list. If you lose that control, this army will fall apart. But that all comes down to just playing and playing and playing, get those repetitions in.
So secondaries, Joe, what does this army, what are your go-to secondaries with this army?
So there's a new secondary that comes in the book, and it's called Take Them Alive. It is 1 point for killing a unit in close combat.
With a Drukhari unit?
With a Drukhari unit, yep.
Really nice.
And then you get 3 points if it's a character or a monster.
Yep.
This is a really fluffy secondary, but it also this army plays into it really well because it's already doing what it wants to do.
Yeah, and if your opponent's got lots of units, that's a lot of kill points there. And really good. Yeah.
The next one is Engage. Like all Eldars do this really well, but this army does it incredibly well because it's lots of little kind of cheap units that can do stuff. Like the Venoms can drop off the incubi and then go and get you Engage.
Mandrakes, pre-game move. Yeah.
Apart from the Ravager, there's no like easy choice for your opponent to kind of pin down. There's none of that that's the key unit that keeps this army going. So, and everything's quite self-sufficient, so you can go off and do things. And again, you're doing what you want to be doing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, what other secondaries? Obviously, domination can also be quite good if it was a 5 objective mission because you've got those big units of witches for the OBSEC, haven't you?
If you're up against an army that's got like expensive units but not many models, like Custodes for instance, or Death Guard, they're running like pure Terminators, things like that. You've got more offset than them, and if you're trapping those Terminators in combat, you've still got your decent invulnerable save on witches. You could be stealing objectives all day.
Yeah.
And then the last one, which is a really, really good one for this army, is deploy scramblers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those mandrakes do deploy scramblers really, really well, because you can have one unit start in your deployment zone.
And this is why we're running 2 units in this list.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So you can have one infiltrating and blocking. If your opponent doesn't have any infiltrators, and so you deploy them last, so you can think like they've left a gap, I'll hit that gap. Or you go, I put both units in my deployment zone. Turn 1, one scrambles, the other one gets removed from the table. Turn 2, one comes into a gap, deploy scramblers there, remove the other one, and then bring that in the next gap. So they're constantly moving around. But at the same time, you've got these little units of Cabalite warriors, you've got this little unit of racks. So your opponent is too busy with witches and incubi to deal with these little units that are doing secondaries for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's brilliant. Same, you could use banners in case, if that really prevented itself. But, just getting a nice easy 10 points on that is excellent. Okay, Joe, so that's the secondaries. As we said, it's got great mobility, it hits hard in combat.
Yeah.
What is something that can, do you really struggle against with this army? What are some key aspects that if you're a Drukhari player, you need to be asking your opponent?
Does your opponent have anything that can remove invulnerable saves? Because this army has next to no armor, it relies on those invulnerable saves. Yeah. If your opponent, as a Space Marine player, turns up with null zone, you've got to deal with that quickly.
Like those witches, for example, getting that 4+ in combat.
Yeah.
If you've got something like Jinx, or Death Hex, or null zone, all of a sudden witches, they're gone.
Yeah. If if your opponent has a high mortal wound output, because this army's lost its feel no pain, but it's gained its invulnerable save, so it's more resilient to shooting. But if someone's throwing mortal wounds at you, you can't deal with it. So you need to protect yourself in your vehicles until that's kind of dealt with.
Yeah. Psychers?
Yeah, Psychers. There is a relic in the book which allows you to deny 1 psychic power a turn, as if you were a Psyker, but there's no other way of doing it.
Yeah. So you really need to know how to counter Psych as well with this army and play around them.
There's a couple stratagems that allow you to do mortal wounds to Psyker units, but it's not as reliable as singling them out, dealing with it on the spot kind of thing.
What other questions would you be asking your opponent? If they can fire indirectly?
Yeah, things like artillery, any psychic powers, any stratagems that allow them to sit in cover and shoot you without being shot at in return, and they can't be attacked into close combat because they can pick up those little units quite comfortably. Like those Grey Knight units of Terminators that just sit in a building and just about 30 rounds a turn, kind of thing. Any stratagems or abilities that reduce your charge as well need to be able, because you need to get consistent charges off every turn. You need to set them up ready so they're not unfailable, but you need to know that there is a 9 out of 10 chance I'm passing this. There's 1 in 10 chance I'll fail it.
And that's where the reroll comes in. Yeah, nice. Or units or armies with lots and lots of screening potential.
Yeah.
So whether they've got things like infiltrators that can move block early doors, or they can zone out that scramble all day long, or armies like with guard, with move to get those not necessarily conscripts, but just like those infantry up the board, move blocking. And because the witches can't jump over models, they are a little bit stuck there. And if obviously the venom does jump over, then all of a sudden that player's got time to blow up the venom, surround it with lots of models, and then all of a sudden, if you can't place any models, then obviously you're going to lose all the goods inside as well. So again, there's lots of questions that you need to be familiar with in asking your opponent. But Joe, it was a pleasure to play the game. It was an awesome battle report.
Yeah, it was easily one of the best, and I really enjoyed it because I got a chance to show off what this army can do. And
we've got a live stream game on Tuesday night, so depending on when you're watching this, you'll be able to either watch it live on Tuesday, and we stream every single Tuesday evening, Greenwich Mean Time, roughly between 6 and 7 o'clock, depending on the time zone. But then also, if you've missed that and you're watching this after, then you can go back and watch it, where you're going to be using a pure Cult of Strife Detachment.
And that's going to be using the new stratagems, relics, and abilities that come in the Book of Rust.
And I'm running Sisters.
Yeah.
So we've got no idea how that result goes. We know what happened with the Ultramarines by this point, but again, we really hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to check out that masterclass, remember the link is below. It's completely free. Get your link to that, reserve your seat for the masterclass, and then if you can't watch it, we'll send you the recording. So again, until our next video, we hope you have a really good Drukhari Field Week.
Goodbye.
See you later.